It was just another warm evening in a small town split into two worlds, the rough and gritty east side and the polished west side. On one side lived the greasers, teenagers from working-class families who wore leather jackets and greased back their hair. On the other side were the Socs, short for socialites, rich kids who drove shiny cars and threw lavish parties. These two groups couldn't be more different, and their clashes had shaped the town's identity for years. For 14-year-old Ponyboy Curtis, a greaser, life was a mix of danger, adventure, and quiet moments of escape. Ponyboy loved reading books and watching movies, but most of all, he loved dreaming about a world beyond the boundaries of the greasers and Socs. That evening, as he walked home from the theater, his head was in the clouds, replaying the movie he had just seen. He was so lost in thought that he didn't notice the dark car creeping up behind him. A group of Socs jumped out, their expensive cologne clashing with the roughness of their voices. They shoved Ponyboy to the ground, laughing as they circled him like wolves. "Let's give this greaser a lesson," one of them sneered. As Ponyboy struggled, gasping for air, a blade flashed in the moonlight. Fear gripped him, but before they could hurt him, a voice roared from the shadows. "Get your hands off him!" It was Derry and Soda Pop, Ponyboy's older brothers, followed by the rest of the greaser gang. The Socs hesitated for a moment, then retreated to their car. Ponyboy's heart raced as he watched them speed away. "You gotta be more careful, kid," Derry scolded. At 20, Derry had taken on the role of both brother and father after their parents had died in a car crash. He was tough on Ponyboy, but only because he wanted to keep him safe. Soda Pop, the middle brother, ruffled Ponyboy's hair. "Don't sweat it, little buddy. We've got your back." A chance meeting. The next night, Ponyboy and his best friend, Johnny Cade, went to the drive-in theater. Johnny, at 16, was the quietest of the greasers. Years of abuse at home had left him timid, but his loyalty to the gang was unshakable. At the theater, they met Cherry Valance and Marcia, two SOC girls who had come without dates. Cherry wasn't like other Socs. She was kind, thoughtful, and curious about the greasers. As she talked with Ponyboy, they discovered they had more in common than they'd thought. Cherry loved sunsets, and so did Ponyboy. They laughed and shared stories, momentarily forgetting the invisible line that divided their worlds. But reality came crashing back when Bob Sheldon, Cherry's boyfriend and a notorious SOC troublemaker, showed up. His presence was a storm cloud, full of menace. Cherry stepped in, defusing the situation before it escalated. She left with Bob, but not before telling Ponyboy, "Things are rough all over, but it's the same sun that sets for both of us, a night of violence." Later that night, Ponyboy and Johnny wandered through the park, talking about life and dreaming about a world without Socs or greasers. But their peaceful moment was shattered when Bob and his gang ambushed them. The Socs were drunk and looking for trouble. They grabbed Ponyboy and shoved his head into the fountain, holding him underwater. Desperation clawed at him as his vision blurred. He thought he was going to die. Suddenly, the weight on him lifted, and he gasped for air. Johnny stood over Bob's lifeless body, a bloody switchblade in his trembling hand. The other Socs ran, leaving the two boys alone in the dark park. Johnny's face was pale, his voice shaking. "I had to. He would have killed you." Ponyboy nodded, but his mind raced. They couldn't go home. The police would never believe their side of the story. They needed help, and they knew just who to turn to. Dallas Dally Winston, the toughest and most street-smart greaser they knew. On the run, Dally didn't ask many questions. He handed them some money, a loaded gun, and directions to an abandoned church in the countryside. "Lay low," he said. "I'll check on you in a few days." The boys hopped on a train and made their way to the church. It was old and eerie, but it became their sanctuary. For days, they hid, surviving on bologna sandwiches and candy bars. They read Gone with the Wind to pass the time, with Ponyboy explaining the themes to Johnny. One morning, as they watched the sunrise, Ponyboy recited a Robert Frost poem. "Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold." Johnny listened intently, his eyes reflecting both sadness and hope. "Nothing gold can stay," Ponyboy finished, and Johnny nodded. I think it means everything good is fleeting, but it's worth holding on to. Heroes in the fire. Their quiet days ended abruptly when the church caught fire. A group of schoolchildren had been playing nearby, and the boys heard their panicked screams. Without hesitation, Ponyboy and Johnny ran into the burning building, pulling the kids to safety. Flames licked at their clothes, smoke filled their lungs, but they didn't stop. By the time they emerged, the children were safe, but Johnny was gravely injured. A beam had fallen, crushing his back and leaving him unconscious. Dally arrived just in time to help get them to the hospital. As the ambulance sped away, Ponyboy realized something. Being a hero wasn't about being a greaser or a SOC. It was about doing the right thing no matter the risk. The rumble. News of the fire spread quickly, and Ponyboy and Johnny were hailed as heroes. But the rivalry between the Socs and Greasers didn't stop. Tensions boiled over into an all-out rumble. The Greasers prepared for the fight, knowing it was about more than just territory. It was about pride, survival, and proving they weren't just street trash. Ponyboy, despite being younger and smaller, joined the fight alongside Derry, Soda Pop, and the rest of the gang. The rumble was chaotic and brutal. Fists flew, blood spilled, and shouts echoed in the night. In the end, the Greasers emerged victorious, but it was a hollow win. Ponyboy's mind was elsewhere, worried about Johnny in the hospital. Loss and grief. After the rumble, Ponyboy rushed to Johnny's bedside. Johnny was weak, his voice barely a whisper. "Stay gold, Ponyboy. Stay gold." These were his last words before he passed away, leaving the gang devastated. Dally, who had always seen Johnny as a younger brother, couldn't handle the loss. He stormed out of the hospital, consumed by grief and rage. Later that night, he robbed a store and confronted the police, waving an unloaded gun. It was a deliberate act, suicide by cop. As the gang watched helplessly, Dally was gunned down, his body crumpling under the streetlights. Ponyboy felt like his world was falling apart. He had lost 2 friends in one night, and the weight of it all threatened to crush him. Finding hope. In the days that followed, Ponyboy struggled to make sense of everything. He withdrew from his brothers and barely spoke to anyone. But as he sifted through Johnny's belongings, he found a letter addressed to him. The letter urged Ponyboy to keep seeing the good in the world, to stay gold, and to tell their story. Inspired, Ponyboy began writing, pouring out his thoughts and experiences. It was his way of honoring Johnny and Dally, of making sure their lives weren't forgotten. Conclusion: breaking the cycle. The Outsiders ends with Ponyboy finding a sense of purpose. He realizes that while the divisions between the Socs and Greasers might never disappear, understanding and empathy can bridge the gap. Through his writing, he hopes to inspire others to see beyond the surface and recognize the shared humanity in everyone. In the end, Ponyboy's journey is one of growth, resilience, and the pursuit of hope in a world that often feels divided. It's a reminder that even in the darkest times, there's still a chance to stay gold. Stay tuned for more enlightening content. Head over to www.mybooksummary.com. Don't forget to subscribe and share the magic with friends. And let's grow together through the power of books and interesting stories.